It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We're back live with you. Welcome to the show. Today's show is the latest installment in our Leadership Matters series, which is, of course, is sponsored by the Effective Syndicate. But there's a twist on the old routine, just like we announced last time. So this is another Coach's Corner edition of Leadership Matters. We asked for your questions in the last few weeks, and now our panel here is going to stand and deliver. So stay tuned. Like all of our series on Supply Chain Now Radio, you can find our replays on a wide variety of channels, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever else you find your podcast from. As always, we'd love to have you subscribe so you don't miss anything. So let's welcome in our featured guest today, Mr. Bo Groover, of course, founder and president of the Effective Syndicate. Bo, how you doing?
I'm doing perfect. How are you?
Man, perfect. That's a new one.
I know.
What a great week. Great day.
It's been a great week. It's been a great run and a great day.
Okay. We're going to learn more. All right. And then we also have new to the Coach's Corner, new to Leadership Matters. We have Enrique Alvarez, Managing Director at Vector Global Logistics, of course, who hosts our studio here. And he's got some exciting news. He's about to launch a new supply chain innovation center right here in Atlanta. Enrique.
Yeah, that is correct. Thanks for having me again, Scott. Always a pleasure. And it's been a great week and an amazing day. Wednesdays are one of my best days, actually.
Really?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to hook y'all into the power grid and power the rest of the city from an electricity standpoint. Lots of positive vibes here. So today's show, we've got our work cut out for us. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Have you had your vitamins?
Yes.
Vitamins, coffee.
Is that it?
Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, we were talking in the warm-up conversation about a couple different things, but vitamins and coffee is what we'll stick to. Okay, so we've got 4 or 5 questions that we're going to tackle today, all submitted by listeners and folks that are curious about different elements of, from leadership to culture to engagement to diversity, you name it. And Bo, where are we starting?
So I wanted to start, actually, a guy that I used to work with years ago. His name's Jason Watts. Jason, thanks for the question. His question is, I saw one comment already regarding culture, and that's a big one for most places. I am always interested in learning more about how to influence culture. A wise man once taught me that culture is simply the results of behaviors within the organization. His question, how do leaders play into that result, and what should be some key indicators of the direction those results are trending? So, good backdrop, good question. Who wants to lead us off?
Well, I'd love to. One of the great things when we confirmed Enrique was going to be on the show, they've got an incredible culture here at Vector Global Logistics. So I think let's start with you.
Yes, no, thank you very much. And that's a very, very good question, Jason. Thanks for bringing it up. I think that's on every company's mind. And I think that as we continue to push forward in today's world, this is very important. This is one of the main questions that most CEOs out there are probably trying to answer, and I think it's important. So for me, this has different answers, but one of the most important ones for me is just having purpose. I think in order for people to be to just have this incredible organization, and how people that are leading the organizations can have a role into what their team's behavior is. It's really just through purpose. There has to be a common goal, a common vision, something that everyone can rally around, and something that will also hold people accountable when results are not there.
I'm with you, and I love the common goal, common purpose, that rallying, that what pulls people together towards a singular mission. That is such a powerful element, I think, of real successful cultures. A couple of things when I saw Jason's question, and I was thinking in my mind, what makes for that compelling culture? I think a couple things struck me. First off, of course, it's all about the people, right? And that's easier said than done, right? If you think about the structure, the policies, how organizations are run, oftentimes the people are lost in the shuffle. They're lost in the process. They're lost in the bottom line. They're lost in a lot of things. So I think the most successful cultures, powerful cultures, maintain that it's all about the people. I think that leaders that set these compelling cultures, I think they are really good at not just encouraging contributions, but letting folks contribute, right?
That's right.
It's not just about getting the team to write some ideas and put in a bucket, every Thursday afternoon. It's about generating ideas and then letting folks step up and lead it, right? I think that's really important. And then, for me at least, leadership and culture are inseparable, right? And I think some of the more successful leaders that establish these cultures, they are also incredible followers. And I think that is such an important element related to successful, empowering, compelling cultures.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that he was also hitting on was the result, right? Mm. And so I spent a lot of time with organizations, and when there's admiring the results, good or bad, and really I think the leadership component of this is looking at the inputs.
Yeah.
And so if you're not getting the result that you want, instead of saying, hey, why don't y'all try harder, which, never thought of that, boss, I guess I'll try harder next week. It's just kind of silly. But what are the inputs that are producing that result that you want? So if you talk about sales revenue as a perspective, what are the inputs to sales? Well, it's your marketing engine, it's your number of sales calls, what are your salespeople doing, who is your target market? There's a lot of inputs that go into it. And then how do you coach through that? So look, it's not punitive. We're not getting the result that we want. Doesn't mean I'm going to beat you up. Doesn't mean you're going to get penalized or anything like that. But there's something broken in our process that's not producing the results that we want. And so from a coach's perspective is really kind of pulling people in to say, look, you own this thing. What do we need to do to get it working right in a very positive, uplifting way, not in a punitive, you're screwing up kind of way?
I think to your point, Bo, I think that just, and I don't know if celebrating is the right word, but I use it a lot. I think celebrating mistakes is important. I think the more open companies are for people to make mistakes, the better organizations will be, the more they're going to learn, the less likely they are to repeat the mistakes. So this is exactly what you're talking about, right? It's about focusing on results, making sure that everyone has a very clear understanding what's expected of them at a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, and then also being open enough and humble enough to recognize that making mistakes is the only way to truly learn and truly impact your culture and truly grow as individuals. And as more individuals grow, the more the company will grow. And so part of setting up a culture and trying to influencing a culture has a lot to do with being honest and open and mature enough to allow people to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Great point.
Well put. And it's as silly or as non-intuitive as it sounds, you've got to celebrate failure.
For sure.
Because if you're not failing, you're not getting yourself out there. You're going to stymie innovation. You're going to stymie creativity, right? Because if folks that are part of an organization feel that they will solely be punished if the projects fail, the new ideas fail, you're going to stay in the current state forever, right?
Right. All stick and no carrot.
Yes.
Correct.
So any other comments around this first question? What a great way to start it, Jason Watts. And quick, again, to our audience, this is live. So you can tune. I think we might have a 1.5 second delay. So tune in if you want to. We've got, I think we're live tweeting. I think we're live Instagramming, I believe. If you want to comment on anything you hear here or pose a new question or your own observation, we'll do our best to get you involved in the conversation. Jason Watts, what an outstanding lead-off question. Before we go to question number 2, Bo, you've got a new hat.
I do have a new hat, and I wasn't sure the right time, but I wanted to thank you. So this is our second version of Coach's Corner, and last week we were joking around about, hey, I ought to have a coach's hat, or we ought to have coach's shirt or something. And so I showed up today, and hopefully you can see it on the camera. I showed up today, and Scott has provided me with a nice coach's hat. That's so right. I feel very official in this hat, by the way. I feel like I'm qualified to serve as a coach now.
Love it. Well, and we're kind of illustrating. You got to have fun. Right?
Absolutely.
Cultures, everything can't be 1987 IBM. It's got to, especially these days, right? And also, especially where work oftentimes follows people home, right? You can be reached on your smartphone device, email, or social, or business world does not stop. So the time that we spend together, I think it being incorporating the fun factor is a really important item.
And to your point, and something we do care a lot about here at Vector, is just like we don't believe in work-life balance. We believe that's a very old-fashioned mentality, because everything's just life, right? Individuals are individuals, regardless of whether you're here or at home or with your family or with your son or your kids. So I think that, to your point, it's very, very important just to have that maturity as a company and as individuals and as leaders and also followers to just understand that we're all here together. We only have one life, and we want to make the best of it in all different aspects of what that entails.
Yep, like that. Well said.
Great.
Okay, so moving right along. Thanks again, Jason, for that leadoff question. Question number 2. This comes from one of the strongest leaders I've worked around, Jessica Clayton, founding partner at Talent Stream. And Jessica states, I agree with Scott that culture is a big piece of any company's success. I think an important aspect of that is a leader's ability to motivate their employees. How do you keep your workforce engaged and motivated, especially when it comes to any type of change? So who'd like to lead off there?
I'll take the first shot at this one. So
go ahead, Bo.
I could talk, we could talk a lot about this one, I'm sure. I think the most important component, or at least one of the most important components, is to involve them. When you talk about the change aspect, the pace of change right now in business is nothing short of breathtaking. And so our workers, our employees, our teammates, our colleagues are all dealing with the same thing on top of the rest of their life. Their husbands and wives and mothers and fathers and all of those other roles that we serve. And so change at work, we know, psychologically speaking, the majority of people aren't excited about change. They want to find a routine. They want to get in the groove. And so when change comes, most people, psychologically speaking, feel it as a loss. And so our best shot at overcoming or counteracting that with our employees is to simply involve them and say, hey guys, here's what's coming. Here's why it's coming. Here's what it looks like from where we're standing. Wanted to involve you. What do you think? How does this make you feel? Let's talk about it. And it's not a kumbaya, let's hold hands and roast marshmallows thing. It's, look, this is happening, right? I mean, can you imagine?
I'm envisioning sitting around a campfire with marshmallows.
Roasting marshmallows, see? But I mean, think about the cases that we talk about all the time. Think about Blockbuster watching Netflix. Think about, I'm still boggled at why it took Walmart so long to counteract the Amazon 2-day delivery thing. They already had the supply chain. They already had locations. They had a distribution that it was second to none. Why did it take y'all so long and lose so much market share to respond? It's just kind of boggling. So the change thing is a great conversation starter in our experience to say, let's involve people, let's talk about what's going on, and let's get them involved in how do we overcome it and how do we counteract it.
Yeah, I think the more we openly talk about the company and the more we're honest and transparent with everyone that works for the company, the more we're going to get them to be engaged. I totally agree with you. The other aspect I would mention is just caring, like truly caring for people. And just by caring, I mean taking the time, because there's really no shortcut when it comes to getting to know someone, but really taking the time to getting to know someone, getting to know people, getting to know everyone that works in your company or working as a peer of yours, and just going from there, because everyone has a certain different take on life. They have different values, different cultures, and it's important that you get to know everyone to make sure that everyone's engaged and everyone feels heard and contributing.
Great point. We all have a different lens, right? We all
for sure.
Process the world and what goes on around us differently, right? That's part of what makes us what is a human element. So I think communication, Bo, was one of the big themes I heard, and as how you talked about engagement and processing change and leading change and motivating employees, and then I love the care factor, right? That gets lost in shuffle.
Well, you can't fake it, right? It's just what you were saying about kumbaya and roasting marshmallows together. I mean, you can't really fake that kind of relationship with people, and it just doesn't there's no corners. It takes time, a lot of time to develop. But I think if you do it and you go through the challenge of what that entails, it'll be good for the company overall.
Agreed. So, Bo, given that we're talking engagement, I'm surprised you didn't start with the Gallup numbers that I know you love to share, because, I think engagement, it seems like to me, can be one of these topics that it can be softer or more intangible, and because of that, it can be kind of dismissed. But when you look at numbers, Gallup has a variety of polls, but one of the Gallup polls that was released in the last few years, 32% of employees in the U.S. are successfully engaged. And that's successfully engaged. And so the flip side, doing my quick South Carolina math, 68% are disengaged on some level. And I was reading one of the blog articles around this, and it's engagement is tougher to kind of maybe define than it is just to kind of illustrate. You think of employee. I think we're getting a shipment in. But you think of employee A and employee B. And employee A is actively engaged. He or she arrives 10 minutes early each day, and they are consumed with what they're doing. They love what they do. They're being heard. They're being engaged. They're contributing, right? So think about that mindset. And then you think about someone that's actively disengaged. It doesn't just impact punctuality, but it impacts everything that they contribute, everything they touch, every interaction they have within an organization. And so not only are they very negatively impacted, but the organization is also very negatively impacted, right?
Absolutely. And it takes root if it's not aggressively managed or assertively at the least. But some more statistics. So according to Deloitte, and I don't remember the year of this, 94% of executives and 88% of employees believe that a distinct workplace culture is important. According to Forbes, companies with a strong culture saw a 4 times increase in revenue growth. According to Bain & Company, over a period of 7 years, companies with more engaged workers grew revenue 2.5 times as much as companies with less engaged workers. So I think we're at a precipice, if you will. I think there's a turning point happening right now. And we're becoming more and more aware of how important the culture is. And you've got that exacerbated with the remote workforce. You've got the generational change. So I think there's an awakening happening right now within a lot of organizations that, look, this culture thing, we used to call it soft skills. It ain't soft. It's really damn hard. And so as the awareness grows, I think we're getting better at it. And just to piggyback on what Enrique was talking about, the courage to care is a huge leadership lever. So if you're willing and able to be vulnerable and care about a human being, not just on the surface level of, hey, I know Scott's going to do the assignment that he said he was going to do. I trust Scott. That's like surface level trust. Right. But when it gets down to, holy crap, Scott is going through something and I care about him, so I'm going to call him, at 8 o'clock at night because I just saw his email. Scott, are you okay? I saw what you're dealing with. That light bulb keeps clicking in and off on me. But the ability to genuinely care, I don't know humans who don't respond well. I've not met humans who like, man, I really want to be around a bunch of people who don't care anything about me. I haven't met those human beings yet. It
cannot be overstated. The care factor cannot be overstated. Hey, quick to the audience, our marketing team has corrected me. So if you want to get engaged in this episode, you can direct message us on Instagram with any questions, and you can tweet at us to ask questions or share your observations, and we'll get those passed right along to us. Any other great question by Jessica Clayton. Again, you can check out talentstreamstaffing.com. They do a lot of great recruiting and staffing across the end-to-end supply chain. You had something, Bo?
Yeah, well, just to counteract, and I agree it was a great question, good conversation, but I also am a firm believer in Mel Robbins. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her work, but
5 seconds.
The 5-second rule, one of the things that she talks about, and this is more of an individual coaching than a team kind of thing, but if you're coaching a human being, motivation is garbage. Right. So I can listen to as many inspirational videos as I can. I can read as many books and read devotions, whatever things it is that feeds me my motivation. And at some point, I'm going to be tired. It's too early. It's too late. It's too dark. It's too cold. It's too hard. It's too something.
Right.
And so what we've got to be coaching our colleagues to, and the mentees, if we're serving as a mentor, which a coach is look, it's discipline. I understand that you want to feel motivated. I understand that we all have that need, but at some point that's going to fail. And what you're left with then is, can you still get the job done? Can you still get your butt out of bed? Can you still make it to the gym? Can you still get the report done? We're all tired. It's all been a long day. We've all got sick kids. So at some point, again, from an individual coaching perspective, and hopefully some folks are out there listening for this purpose, is look, motivation is great, but at some point it stops. So what you've got to develop also as individuals is that discipline. I've got to figure out the way to get it done anyway.
That reminds me, it's like a football game, right? You can have the best motivational pre-game speech going into the first quarter, or you can have the best halftime speech, and that will impact early third quarter. But at the end of the day, in that late second quarter or late in the fourth quarter, where you've got to just reach down deep, and it's guts, as Dabo says, bring your own guts. BYOG, I love that because it illustrates your point. There's only so much from a motivational standpoint that leaders can do. At the end of the day, folks have to kind of make their own decision if they're going to power through some of this stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And I think that for that to happen, it has to come from like a very honest, very open place, right? If you're an individual and you're caring for your family and you have your job, the only way that you're going to give that 110% is if you really believe in what this work is all about. So it has to be something more than yourself, more than your team, something more inspirational, something that you really care about. And that's just something that you can find if you take the time to, one, get to know the people that are working with you enough, and then of course if you as a company have a very clear purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, because that's what at the end of the day, when the days are cold or too hot or too dark or too light, as you put it, Bo, that's really what's going to just take us out of bed and try to give our best, right?
Agreed.
The only other thing, and I think you mentioned this before, Scott, tackling the first question, but I think it's actually very relevant for the second one as well, is leadership and leaders in general are just over-glorified. I really think that it's the first followers, and there's also a good TED Talk about this called How to Start a Movement, if you guys want to Google it or search for it. I forgot who was the one that presented it. It was like a 5 to 10 minute TED Talk called How to Start a Movement, and it speaks to that point. It's really first followers make a lone nut a leader. Without those followers, we would all just be lone nuts out there. So just try to keep that into consideration as you're going with your teams about this. And what I do is I just don't consider myself a leader at all. I'm just part of this team. I'm here to cheer them. I'm here to work with them, and I'm just part of the team. So I think that's something that could potentially impact the engagement levels of employees as well.
I love that. It's like a different spin on servant leadership. And that was Derek Sievers.
That's correct.
How to Start a Movement.
I'm glad that you Google it.
SIVERS. Well, this technically came from Malcolm and the research team. But,
Malcolm and the research team. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Derek Sievers, check it out on How to Start a Movement, a great TED Talk that's been well received. Okay, so that moves us right along to question number 3, right? And Enrique.
Yes, and this question comes from Sarah Barnes Humphrey. And
rock and roll like star in the supply chain industry.
Very nice, outstanding person who's doing great job in supply chain. Thanks, Greg. How to create a more collaborative environment in business? How do we deal with the fast pace of change and the overwhelming amount of information coming at us daily? Smiley face, Sarah.
So, one simple comment, because the first thing when I saw this question, which is such a great question in this age that Sarah responded with, the first thing I thought of is simplicity, right? Simplicity, keeping the small things small, not majoring in the minors, whatever cliche you like. But man, this day and age, when we're getting bombarded from podcasts, social media, if there's, I don't know if there's any good mail coming snail mail these days, but all the information that we're getting bombarded with, so much of it is meaningless. So much of it is noise. And then from an organizational standpoint, how can we keep, as leaders or as team members or as just good colleagues, how can we keep simple thing? How can we just optimize the amount of simplicity in our day-to-day?
That is a really good question. Really, really good question indeed. And I think that's one of the main issues these days, that there's just too much of everything, right? Information, literally everything.
Yep.
One thing that I like to do when I think about this is I think it has to be, when it comes to the team and hiring a good team and just the environment in your company and your culture, I think it has to start from the very, very beginning, from the time that you're hiring people. So what I usually do, or what I like to do with new candidates, is just look for adaptability. Is this candidate adaptable? And just ask a couple of questions that will give you a little bit more information about his or her stand when it comes to how quickly they can adapt to change. Because for us, especially in supply chain, it is very critical. So just hire for that kind of people from the very beginning, even if they don't have like other skill sets. I think just adaptability is just it's key.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think you talk about core behaviors or target behaviors or core values. The collaborative one, I think, is a powerful one, and we spend a lot of time on those core behaviors or target behaviors, however you want to word that, helping organizations say, look, it's not a thing that you hang on the wall. It's how do you interact with one another, and you hold each other accountable to it. So if collaboration is one of the things that you're striving for, you tell people about it when you're interviewing them. You talk about it during the reviews. You're having conversations in the meeting and say, if somebody's not participating, we say, hey guys, remember one of our core behaviors is collaboration, and I'm not hearing anything, what's going on that side of the table, or what's going on with that conversation. So again, there's the leadership component of whatever role you're playing. If you're seeking collaboration, or you're seeking teamwork, or you're seeking trust, you have to articulate that's what you want, you have to reinforce it, and you have to communicate it constantly in order so that it can become a true core behavior. Because once it becomes habitual, you don't have to think about it anymore. That's just the way we roll here. We're collaborative. What both of y'all are sharing through a couple of different these answers makes me think of is prioritization. I think going back to that singular mission, just in a normal day, right? What's the three most important things we've got to get done today? It makes me think of the Lou Holtz thing. What's most important now? What's most important now? As simple of a tool that is to ask yourself after you complete, project ABC, and then you've got that glorious moment when on your laundry list of things to do, you can cross it out, right? I love that is such a satisfying thing. Asking yourself, okay, what is the most important thing to do now? I think when we're moving as fast as we're moving, organizationally, individually, I think effective prioritization and the communication of those priorities are also critical in terms of how we can deal with this fast-paced environment we're in now.
Coupled with that, I would say that also saying no. I think we're terrible at saying no, right? And
Amen.
I think I'm guilty of that. That's one of my main areas of opportunity, if you will, because I just always want to participate, and there's so many different, interesting, cool things happening around me that one of the main things is just saying no. And so one of the things that I believe companies and employees and just people all over need to start doing is just being true to themselves, knowing what they really want to accomplish, but then also what they really like, what gives them their positive energy, what drains them from energy, and then just saying no. And it's okay to say no, and it's okay to push back. It doesn't even matter if it's your supervisor or your peer or your friend or your son or daughter or whoever. It's just at some points you have to say no. You have to be comfortable saying no, and the other people should have to be or should feel comfortable being said no. I mean, you guys shouldn't, or people shouldn't take it as a a personal attack of any sort. Just don't take it personal,
don't take
right?
it
I'm like, listen, no, that's it. No,
we can't focus on everything.
Right.
So just to piggyback on that, and I couldn't agree more, but turn it off, right? So, maybe we're back to the self-discipline thing. The only way all of this stuff is coming at us is because we've got a computer screen, a tablet, an iPhone, a something in our face all the time. So we have the ability to say no by turning the darn thing off.
Correct.
And there's a great book called The Pomodoro Technique by Francesco Cirillo, written in the 80s.
Right. It makes me hungry for pasta.
I think it's
I bet it is
Spanish.
related to Italian, probably. It sounds more Italian to me than Spanish.
I think of a Pomodoro sauce.
Me too.
Maybe I'm butchering that. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, his technique is that you work in 25-minute chunks. So it's not unlike the agile plan for software development, but you work in 25-minute chunks. You turn off your email, you turn off your phone, you turn off your text. If you want to have music in the background, that's fine. But for 25 minutes, you just grind on whatever it is in front of you, and then you take 5 minutes. You stand up, you stretch, you text your wife back. You grab a glass of water, and then you come back and you set the timer, and you grind again for 25 minutes. And I'll tell you, this is one of my time management techniques, and I can get done in probably 4 hours what it used to take me 6 or 7, just because I'm not every 5 minutes checking my email again, and every 3 minutes responding to a text, and every 5 minutes answering a call. I just shut the world out for 25 minutes. So if something's an emergency, it ain't going to change in 25 minutes, right? So it happens, and when you take the break, you respond to whatever it is, and then you keep going. It's a brilliant, simple technique.
Agreed. Love it. Love the Pomodoro effect. We're going to add that link to the show notes. I think that's real powerful. Okay. I know we're trying to keep 10 minutes a question or so to kind of keep moving. Yes, Enrique.
On that particular question, I know you want to move faster.
I got a curveball to give you, but go ahead. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, now I'm a little bit scared about what I'm about to say, because then I will get the curveball and it will just backfire. But I think we have to realize that our organizational structures are not made or designed to handle this kind of fast-paced and overwhelming information. And I think that the other piece of this puzzle, and of course we don't know the answer, I don't know the answer yet, but the other piece that we should probably look into is just the organizational structure. I mean, that has to change. We have to work in smaller, more efficient, more nimble teams.
Perfect. Okay, that's a perfect segue, and you didn't even know you were making a segue. Wow. So we got a question from Instagram. Chris from Instagram. Thank you, Chris, for tuning in and engaging. So Chris asked, as a young professional, what quote-unquote rules should we be breaking? What workplace/leadership norms need to go out of style, and how do we go about updating them? That's a great question. That's a great question.
That is a really good question.
So does anything come to mind? Well, let's break it up. Let's think about the rules.
Should we just say the first thing that came to our minds?
Yes, please.
I would say everything. At least that's the way we approach work here at Vector, right? There's no rules. I don't think that rules are particularly interesting or important, and I've always had a little bit of an issue with authority, and I recognize this. But I think that the more you try, it's more like a test environment these days. So you just go ahead and try if it works. If it doesn't work, then just come back to the drawing board and try something else until you get it right. And honestly, I don't think we should seek for perfection. I don't think we should seek for getting anything right, because the culture will continue to evolve as quickly as we are figuring it out. So it's really more about just trying to adapt as quickly as you can, and just be okay by constantly adapting and never really settling.
Yep.
Well, and I think thanks, Chris, for the question. Love the live interaction. This is the idea behind this format. We're excited about this. But I think I would echo that and try what it is that you think is holding you back. So do whatever it is that you think is in your way, and then watch how the organization responds. If it's a hard and fast culture that is steeped in tradition and it comes down heavy on you, maybe that's not the right place for you. And so for me, from a personal leadership, a self-leadership perspective, if I think there's a rule that's holding back the team or holding back the thing, again, I'm gonna take my shot and see what happens, and hopefully I've got a supportive team that says, hey, that was a good try, but we missed. What could we do different to win next time? But if they come down and it's a beat down, and they tell me how bad I screwed up and how much I suck, maybe that's not going to be the culture that I want to fit into, right? Because I have a choice just as much as the company has a choice. There's no chains, or we're not trees. So if we don't like it, we get up and leave. Correct. Right? So it's an interesting question for sure.
It's a
really good question, yeah.
From Chris, great question. So one quick answer to that I would have is, the days of needless stuffiness and formality, that's one thing that's got to change, right? Sometimes I think organizations, especially I think of the 80s culture and in modern business, we create these needless rules and formality, and what's the impact? What's the advantage? What's the benefit? I think of some of these decision-making matrix where you've got to get 4 or 5 signatures on some very simple decisions.
No one has time for that.
Yeah, no one has. That's right. No one has time for that. It's like that meeting.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I thought for sure when you were going to go there, but great question, Chris. And you know what? We ought to bake this into the next, because I bet if we sat down and really thought about it, there's probably a variety of rules that we've got to do a better job of breaking. All right. So, Bo.
Yep. So I think will be the last question, from a timing perspective. This one comes from Amanda. I'd love to hear your perspective on inclusion and having diverse teams in the workplace. How do you encourage organizations to step out of their comfort zone and hire or promote or build teams with more diverse perspectives, experiences, backgrounds, cultures, genders, etc. in mind? Great question, very poignant and relevant right now.
Yep. So I'll lead first here. So a couple examples, I think that will be recognizable people. That first off, Microsoft has a chief accessibility officer. They've got a staff with resources. They're very deliberate and intentional of getting out of their comfort zone and seeking out diversity in a meaningful way that they're going to bring them on the team. I think if you don't have dollars and leadership currency behind any initiative, you're not going to do it, right?
Right.
So being deliberate and intentional of, hey, we're going to do this, and here's some resources of how we're going to do it so that we can take action and not give lip service. So Microsoft clearly is invested there. I think also equally as important is communicating why it's important. It's not because it's the hip thing to do or it's cliche or whatever. It's because it makes us better. Harvard Business Review has published studies where diverse teams solve problems better. That impacts the bottom line. McKinsey & Company studied 180 companies, I think here in the last couple of years, 180 global companies, and the teams with more diverse leadership teams, that up at the top, more diversity is there, were the ones that were the top financial performers. Again, but we got to communicate that. That's why diversity is important, right? Enrique, your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, there's a couple of things there. One, very in line with what you just said. I think creativity and breakthrough comes from conflict and struggle and challenges. And I'm not talking about like the conflict that can break a company, but the actual conflict that can enrich a company, that can make it grow, that can make it learn, that can make it be just a better company. And I think that you're just going to have that from confrontation and honest feedback and pushing back and just arguing about everything or most things that might be important. And so having diversity and recruiting diversity and making sure that your company has people from all different backgrounds, experiences, and cultures is very important, because without that, you cannot be creative. You cannot be relevant going forward. That would be my main takeaway from that question.
Well, and I think you're going to like this guy. So your open door policy is lame, right? So I talk with leaders and they say, well, I have an open door policy. And it's like, all right, so you want your employees to walk through the office, through all of their colleagues, to come into your office and talk to you about a problem? It's lame. Go talk to your folks. And I think the same thing is true. We know human nature, right? We know ourselves now. It's no mystery that we typically hire folks that are like us, look like us, sound like us. Maybe you click on the first conversation. conversation. I mean, I really like this guy. Well, you should. He's just like you.
Right.
That's not going to help. And so waiting for people to show up is, to me, a losing strategy. But saying, all right, how do we go drive this diversity? How do we become proactive and say, all right, we need to reach into different areas because all of our candidates look the same. And I don't mean physically. I mean similar backgrounds, similar education, similar experiences, similar economic circumstances that they grew up on. And my opinion, it sounds like you've got data to support it, Scott. My opinion is those diverse teams that know how to mix it up and really get into it with each other, they're amazing at solving problems. And once you get again, it's back to the culture. Once you get the culture right, you go through that storming phase of arguing and fussing and cussing with each other. You come out with a great solution, and those people are more close together. They're not. Right. It doesn't break the company. They're closer. They're tighter.
I think in this day and age, in the era of global supply chain, global business, we're never going back, right? I think if your team is more diverse in a very meaningful, successful way, it's not a leap of faith to believe that your communication across that global supply chain and the problem solving and the open and new ideas. I mean, I think your team is going to be better suited for all of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, totally.
All right.
And
so
honestly, and I think that the way I see it right now, I think this is a really good question and it's very valid. But companies that are already kind of trying to figure this out are very late. Very, very late to the game. I think this was probably a good question back in the 80s, but if you're a corporation or a company or someone that's still kind of questioning the benefits of having diversity out there, you're late. You might as well just close shop and start something else because it's way too late for this. Like, there shouldn't be any kind of argument around the fact that diversity creates better teams. It's just too dated for me.
So let's. I want to share something that we're big here. We're big believers. Well, not. We're big believers in taking action. We hate lip service leadership, right?
Correct.
Hate lip service leadership. So I think you got to be honest with yourself, right? So here at Supply Chain Now Radio, about 3 or 4 months ago, when we looked at the time, we've probably had about 120 episodes, right, of a wide variety of thought leaders. Unfortunately, when we were really honest with ourselves, when we went back and looked at all the pictures and evaluated all the guests, it was a very monolithic wall of thought leaders, right? So first off, you got to be honest with yourself, right? When you identify the problem, and then what's the simple thing? Even some of the most simple things you can do to help the best of intentions. We didn't set out back in May 2017 to offer one universal point of view. We, with who we partner with and core to who we are, we wanted to represent a wide variety. But unfortunately, at that point in time, 6-8 months ago, we weren't successful enough in doing just that. So we started to create different series that would help us, right, be very intentional and do a better job of baking into our master equation or formula better results, something that's going to produce better results. And I think just how we learned that from a content generation standpoint, I really think there's some really business lessons there that can be learned when it comes to talent acquisition and management, when it comes to just, for that matter, moving past talent, making sure that once you have a diverse workforce, that all parties are listened to and have an opportunity to contribute and lead and be successful, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Okay.
But I mean, I think you're describing the problem as it exists, right? So your circle at that time looked a certain way, not by any intentionality. It just happened.
It just happened to be that.
And then when you started reaching out into it, what you were getting was a very monolithic perspective. So you changed your approach. You changed the input back to the earlier question because you didn't like the result that you saw. So it's a great metaphor for what we're talking about here. But again, you were proactive, right? You said, hey, there's a problem. I'm going to change my input, so you went and did it. And I think your show is better for it, by the way.
I agree. We still got a long way to go. We still have a long way to go. But, it is a journey. And but you got to call time out. I think you got to be honest with yourself. And I think that is so, that applies to all these questions I think we've gone through here today. And I think the most successful, effective leaders are just that, folks, that they embrace reality, as it is. Any final thoughts around this last question that came in from the one and only Amanda Luton?
I think just listening, right? Again, I think that it is very true that the world's getting smaller and smaller, whether we like it or not. It is true as well that it's getting very there's segregated in different ways, right? There's different. We're all through social media or through technology or through our friend circles or any way you want it. We're hanging out with people that are a little more like us. We're liking people that are like us. And I think one of the problems we have is that we're just starting to take sides. And there's tons of sides and there's way too many sides. And we should all realize that we're all in this together. We're all in the world together. We're all human beings. We all have the right to be free, to pursue happiness, to work hard, to have passions, to have goals. And so it's just listen to each other, no matter if you're left, right, cold, warm, whatever you want to call each of the different sides out there. Just be open to people in general.
Hard to pick sides on a round rock.
That is true. That is
we
true.
found a way to do it.
We do it, and very kind of successfully sometimes.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That's a good one, though.
That is a good one.
Thank you.
Any final comments? So this was, I thought we had a slate of wonderful questions in the first session that, by the way, we're going to be publishing here in the next few days. This might have been a more challenging slate of questions, I think.
I think so. And I think, hopefully this series continues to grow and we get the traction that we expect it to, because we want to hear from folks who are dealing with things that maybe they don't have a different outlet to reach out to. So, we will have different coaches. Thank you, Enrique, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure as always, and it's been a lot of fun. So I enjoyed it.
Good.
Thanks.
Yep. Good. Absolutely. And check out Vector Global Logistics, vectorgl.com, right?
That's correct.
And y'all are hiring.
Thank you very much. Always.
Yeah, it's always
hiring.
I think I met some of your new team members here, and as well as one of the new leaders of the Innovation Center, which is going to be exciting to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of. But folks can reach out to Enrique at vectorgl.com. And Bo, how can folks plug in with what you're doing? I mean, you're all over the place as well. You've got a couple keynotes coming up. Of course, you got a panel event next week at the Georgia Manufacturing Summit. How can folks learn more and plug in more to your perspective and expertise?
Absolutely. So, and by the way, my panel at GMA is wildly diverse. So I'm going to get the diversity award on the panels for sure. I think the best way would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's Bo, B-E-A-U, Groover, G-R-O-O-V-E-R. And you can check out me there. And we publish a lot of stuff around culture and leadership and teamwork. And then obviously check out my company website, theeffectivesyndicate.com.
Outstanding. And if for some reason you're not finding what you're looking for, you can shoot us a note to connect@supplychainnowradio.com, and we will make sure to get you plugged in however we can. All right, so just a couple of events. Actually, you're going to find Bo, Enrique, their teams. You're going to find us. We're broadcasting live, all from the Georgia Manufacturing Summit, Wednesday, October 9th. So if you're tuned in live, you can take that little nugget and you can go to GeorgiaManufacturingAlliance.com, and I think you can still register. I think registration is still open for the next 24 hours. If you're hearing this on the replay side, you have missed a wonderful summit. So we'll take a snapshot of the future. But if you are a veteran, we've got 50. Jason Moss and the GMA has set aside 50 free seats, and if they're still available, you can use the promo code USAVET to obtain a free seat. And all that is no strings attached. Jason really wants to help veterans make connections and build their network and learn best practices and find opportunities and market intel. So USA Vet, use the GeorgiaManufacturingAlliance.com URL and sign up for the summit. Looking past the summit, which we're really excited about, we're going to be in Charleston with the South Carolina Logistics Tech Talk, broadcasting live on October 23rd. You can learn more at scompetes.org. Of course, we're going to Austin. We've been touting that for a long time. We're excited about, as Greg, who we're missing today, keeping it weird in Austin, I believe is the tagline. November 7th and 8th at the 2019 Logistics CIO Forum there in Austin, which our friends at EFT are putting on. And then the Reverse Logistics Association Conference and Expo in Vegas in February. And, of course, Modex right here in Atlanta in March. And we have secured our keynote for the 2020 Atlanta Supply Chain Awards, which Modex 2020 is hosting. Christian Fisher, President and CEO at Georgia Pacific, will be serving as our keynote. Modex is free to attend, modexshow.com. And, of course, we're going to be publishing our registration and our nomination links for the Atlanta Supply Chain, the 2020 Atlanta Supply Chain Awards in the next few days. Nitty gritty. All right, so big thanks to our guests here today on the latest installment of the Coach's Corner on the Leadership Matters podcast series right here on Supply Chain Now Radio, which is sponsored by the Effective Syndicate. It's been hosted by Vector Global Logistics, Enrique Alvarez with Vector. Wonderful addition to your network. You can find you're on LinkedIn as well.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Mover and Shaker on LinkedIn. So check him out there. As Bo mentioned, Bo's all over LinkedIn. Folks are consuming. They're hunting you down for your content. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't, but I'm glad.
Yeah, I stopped some people coming in here with a big net. They were going to take you back to their organization and put you in front of a microphone. No, lots of blog articles, of course, podcasts, keynotes. I'm looking forward to your panel event next week. But you can connect with Bo Groover, and that's spelled Beau Groover, and you can check him out on LinkedIn. Big thanks to you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
You bet.
thanks for having us.
And thanks to our audience for tuning in. The questions from Amanda and Jessica and
Jason,
Sarah and Jason and Chris, man, that was tough to stand and deliver and walk through some of this. But that's critical to this formula. You're getting great input, frank questions from folks that are, we're all trying to get better, right? And that's a critical component. So stay tuned for more editions of the Coach's Corner, and we're going to be looking for more tough questions. All right, so to our audience, also be sure to check out other upcoming events, replays of our interviews, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. You can find us just about everywhere: Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, all the leading sites where you find your podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. On behalf of the entire Supply Chain Now Radio team, this is Scott Luton wishing you a wonderful week ahead, and we will see you next time on Supply Chain Now Radio. Thanks, everybody.